50% of motorcycle accidents occur in a rider's first 3 to 5 months on their bike. Now, this can easily be confused with a rider in their first 3 to 5 months of riding, but it is specifically the first 3 to 5 months on a bike. That means that someone who is riding for 10 years could be an expert on one bike and be in their first 3 months on another bike, and that's when they're most likely to crash. This is something I didn't understand until after I got this bike, which is why I wanted to make this video. You guys saw how the video started. I had a little bit of an error on a turn. I initially thought this was just because of my eyes, because of something called target fixation, where I was looking at a spot too long and I wasn't adjusting my vision according to where I wanted to go. I got too focused on one spot and I ended up heading to that spot. Although my eyes were not perfect, as you can tell in the video, I was looking through a bit. If I had looked perfectly through, I would have seen the bump that I hit. But it really wasn't a big turn and I wasn't going too fast. But when I hit that bump, the way the motorcycle reacted and the way I reacted to the motorcycle's reaction, that's what led me to be on the side of the road. I remember thinking that I could keep the bike on the road, but out of caution, I just wanted to go off and not try to do something that could get me into a low side, or in that situation, more realistically, a high side. It took me until this week to realize it wasn't just a target fixation issue. I realized I was on a good trajectory to stay on the road and essentially do my normal riding until I hit that bump. When I hit that bump and my bike dove down, I was not expecting that. This is the reason I wanted to make the video. I put over 10,000 miles on 2 different motorcycles before I picked up this R7. However, what I did not realize is the first bike I rode, the one I learned on, was my SV650. It was a naked bike, completely upright riding position. The second bike I rode was this red bike in the back, the Honda VFR 800. The VFR is a very heavy bike, wet weight almost 500 pounds, and it is definitely a sport touring motorcycle. But coming from the SV650, I thought the VFR was a sport bike, even in its positioning. It wasn't until I got this R7 that I realized that the R7 is my first sport bike. Another thing I didn't know about sport bikes is how adjustable they are. My SV650 wasn't super adjustable when it came to the suspension, and neither is the VFR, being that it is a 2002 motorcycle. However, sport bikes, even back in the early 2000s, are very adjustable for a very important reason. They tend to be more lightweight. You tend to have an aggressive leaning position, which changes the weight differential on the bike, and they are more performance-based and created to really lean into those turns as opposed to upright positions. Now, when you lean into the turns, that means you tend to have less room for error, and that's why they are so adjustable. Being over 230 pounds, I didn't know until after this incident that this R7 that I'm leaning on is extremely adjustable, at least for a bike below $10,000. I can adjust the rebound in the front, the compression in the front, I can adjust the front and rear preload, and I can adjust the rebound in the back. The point of this video is for you to understand that if you have put on miles on a particular bike and you go to another bike, you need to really not only research the bike, but research the type of bike and take your time so you can understand how your body interacts with the bike. Being over 230 pounds, this bike is actually set up for someone who's probably about 160 pounds. So the suspension is very soft, meaning it's going to bounce a lot because it's expecting to have a rider that's lighter than me that's not going to be pushing the bike down so much. So when I hit that bump, even though it really wasn't that big of a bump or a pothole in the road, the bike responded more than any bike I have ever ridden would respond in that case. And I was not prepared for that because I had only had the bike for a day or two. Now, I did put 300 highway miles on it, but we all know highway miles and back road cane carbon riding are completely different setups. That's why I wanted to make this video, to show you how easy it is to adjust your suspension when you know what you're doing. Now, I've learned from different YouTubers, and I even read up on a couple books and a couple articles online to make sure I wasn't going to ruin the bike in this. The SV650 was a little bouncy, but it never really bothered me. It's just something that I knew if I wanted to track it, I may want to, adjust the suspension a little bit. But when I felt the R7, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. Like, I don't feel safe going through turns because it bounces too much when I'm leaning in and out. And again, that's because the bike is lighter, but also more of my weight is leaned forward, so I can really feel all of it much more than I could in a neutral position where my center of gravity is a little bit different. I was very pleased to learn that the R7 is not only adjustable, but it comes from the factory so adjustable that all you really need is a screwdriver and perhaps a torque wrench. Now, this is not unique to the R7. Most sport bikes or adjustable bikes that you guys have will be adjustable with just the simple tools you already have in your garage, especially if you've done an oil change on the bike. It is imperative that you all learn how to adjust your bike to your weight, because it's moments like these where you're going through the turn, you see something unexpected, that's when you really feel the suspension. At the track, you may not even feel it as much until you ride well enough to unlock the need for more in that. Most people may not even really feel it at the track. When I rode the R7, I didn't feel it at the track. That was the model R7 I rode. I've gotten heavier since then, but also this bike probably is adjusted a bit differently because they probably adjusted that one for the track. I realized that this bike just wasn't made for my weight initially. I can adjust it though, and that's what we're gonna do today. Most of what you need to know in terms of how to adjust your bike is going to be in the manual. For the R7, the only thing that confused me was preload versus rebound and compression. And I understood the meaning of those. Rebound is how quick these shocks at the bottom bounce back, whereas compression is how quick they go down. Preload is essentially how the bike responds in a seated or in a static state with you and all your gear on it, how low it goes and how it holds your weight in that static position. However, the thing that confused me was the diagram, which I can show you, where rebound and preload look like they were the same adjustment, which is not true. It's a very efficient setup that they have on the R7, but you guys will see that later on. The first thing I'm going to work on is going to be my rebound. Shout out to Moto-Jitsu, who I saw do a demonstration on how to lock in the rebound for your bike. Again, the rebound is how the bike bounces up once it's already been compressed, and that's what we're going to work on. So from my understanding, preload, you want to see the length of your front shock, which for the R7 is supposed to be 127 millimeters. And you want to see how much it depresses when you sit on it, again with your full gear on, so it's a realistic measurement. I'll do that next. We're going to use zip ties for that because I don't have a partner helping me right now. But for rebound, what you want to do is you want to lean the bike upright, okay? Make sure you hold that rear brake. And now I'm going to push the bike in the direction of the shocks. So right now, or in the direction of the forks. So my forks go about this angle, and I'm going to push down at this angle. I'm not going to push down at this angle because my forks are this way. But if your forks are this way, you would be kind of pushing more out that way. Because I actually have adjusted this, and I recorded the whole video without audio. So I'm going to back out the screw for all of these to make sure everything is as soft as possible. So you guys can see for mine, soft is going counterclockwise and hard is going clockwise. So we're gonna go out. You're listening for clicks typically. So that's one click, 2, 3. You're gonna keep going until you hit a rotation that doesn't click. And at that moment, you don't wanna push past it. You just go back to the most recent click, and that's all the way out. Again, I'm going counterclockwise. That's based on what my bike has both in the user manual and on this bike here. So that's what I'm gonna do. If your bike is different, again, make sure you research. This video is not an expert video. It's simply a quick way to get your setup more locked in. And if you're not comfortable or confident in how you set it up, definitely talk to a professional or do some more research. My goal is to show you how easy this is to do and hopefully make you feel like you have been sitting on a gold mine this whole time when you realize that you could have adjusted the suspension on your bike a long time ago. Now, from what I have heard, when you change the suspension on your bike feels completely different. And the idea that I could have a bike from the factory and be able to customize it to my body and my liking, I'm not gonna lie, when I learned the R7 could do that, and when I got in a position where I actually could appreciate it, that made me feel really good. So you guys can do that too if you have a sport bike in most cases. All right, so right now my suspension is as soft as it gets, particularly when we're dealing with the rebound and the compression. All accounts that I've heard, the compression is something you want to adjust and tweak after riding the bike a little bit. So you'll ride it, adjust the compression, ride it, adjust the compression. There's more anecdotal evidence in that form, whereas the rebound is something that you can use a little bit more anecdotally, but a great way to tell what rebound you want is simply by doing a quick check to see how the bike responds when it goes down, comes back up and settles. So what I want to see is the bike, I'm gonna push the bike down, I want it to come up and settle about ½ inch quickly. I don't want it to be slow, and I don't want it to be bouncing and oscillating a lot. So let's see what we have right here. And you want to push again in the direction of the shocks. I also have a mirror set up right here. So typically you may want someone else to do this that you really trust, or you have someone else look at it while you're doing it. But if you don't, just get a simple mirror and that will help. So we're going to push in the direction. You see that bounce? You see how it's just bouncing and rocking? And you don't want to be pulling the bike up. You kind of want to push it down, make sure you have that brake engaged, but then loosen your grip on it so you don't manipulate the rebound too much. So that's about 2. It's going down, up, settle. When the suspension is correct, it should be more like up, stop, right there. Up, stop, right there. So right now the suspension is as soft as it gets. Now we're gonna make it as hard. We're gonna harden the suspension to see how it looks on the other extreme. Click. So I'm just turning this clockwise. 11, 12, 13. All right, it doesn't want to go past 13. So we're gonna stop at 13. All right, you see we took out that second oscillation. I'm not gonna lie, that actually feels pretty good. It's going down, up, and then stopping pretty quickly. So we want it to go down, up, settle after going down ½ inch. I mean, that's very close. I think it actually may be just a little too hard, but it's a lot closer to what I would like. So I'm not going to go all the way back. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to just go up one at a time to see if it's the right balance. This may actually be what I want, but I'm a little skeptical that going to this extreme is where I want to start. It just doesn't feel right. So we're going to experiment. We're going to go 1 up in softness, counterclockwise, click, half a click, I guess is what they say, or half a revolution. All right, let's see. Okay, that's a good settle. I think the suspension is just really bouncy though. All right, we're gonna go back down and see. I also may just be too strong. That we're not gonna rule that out. But the thing is, I feel comfortable having a harder suspension just because I know I am heavier, and that's okay. But I just want to make sure I'm not bottoming out the shocks either. I think we're gonna go with that. So for me, I'm gonna go with the hardest, but you have to be able to check it for your bike. Also, this is a starting point for me. When I'm riding, if it feels like the suspension is too tough or too hard, then I will adjust it. But that's to show you simply how easy it is to dampen or stiffen the suspension that you have. This is what I was talking about earlier, where in the manual, it showed the same clockwise and counterclockwise arrows for both of these. But then when I looked closer, I realized one was the counterclockwise and clockwise arrows for right here where I have the screwdriver, which is the rebound. But then you see the hex shape right here, which when I have my hex bolt, I can adjust the preload. So the preload will be like this gold part that I'm adjusting, and you have to match. So whatever I do here, I need to do it on the preload for the left side, whereas this is just rebound. And the one right here that takes the flat head on the left side is just a compression. Again, that's all outlined in the manual. All right, for the compression, I've already figured out what I want. So for me, it's going to be, I'm gonna stiffen it to the max. And again, compression, you want to ride the bike and see where you are after that. So I'm gonna stiffen it to the max here. And then we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4 for me. All right. So that is how the R7 will be set up for me when it comes to the front, rebound, and compression.